When you think of texture, the first thing that probably comes to mind is food, and then maybe the way something feels in your hand, like gritty sand or a smooth apple. But when Ken Posner thinks about texture, he's probably referring to how something feels under his feet. That's because Ken is a barefoot runner, hiker, and even pedestrian. Of course, he carries a pair of shoes with him from time to time, especially when in town, but there's something especially grounding about walking on our epic planet without inches of rubber and plastic separating you from a bond that our early ancestors may have experienced but not even appreciated. I'm one of your hosts, Yeti Legs, and you're listening to the Yeti Walks into Basecamp podcast, a show for thru hikers, backpackers, hikers, tree huggers, and anyone who just loves to walk outside. In today's episode, we chat with Ken Barefoot Posner about why he ditched the dreads for a more organic approach to getting around, how many times he's stubbed a toe or done even worse to his feet, how this connects to the realities of life and modern technology, believe it or not, and a challenge for you to even go outside and walk barefoot just to see what it's all about. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello, Tramily. How you guys doing?
Hello. Welcome to the podcast, Yeti
Walks into Basecamp.
Talking.
Thru.
Hiking. We are your host. I'm Yeti Legs.
And I'm Basecamp.
We are a married couple that does thru hiking, normal hiking. We do some ultra running. We
We need to do more.
We need to get back into it.
I know. We haven't in a minute.
We got a little husky mute, which is like a husky Malamute mix. She keeps us pretty active. And we started this podcast in 2023, and here we are. I am an ecologist/biologist. And what do you do?
I am a commercial film producer. That's about it.
Yep. And that's really all you need to know about us, because today's episode is about the legend who runs around barefoot, if you can believe it.
Hey, Yeti Legs and Basecamp. I'm delighted. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. We're really excited to talk to you. I'm just so fascinated. We were watching your videos and just the fact that you go barefoot when you hike, run, all of the above. I really want to get into that with you and the psychology of it. So
yeah, I was on your website, and you have quite the, I wouldn't even call it a resume at this point. It's a CV of peaks and miles and races that you've completed. A large majority of which have been barefoot. So really excited to dig into that a bit more.
Well, I'm delighted to share whatever I can. Just don't ask me about the Chase branch the other day.
Okay.
We won't.
Now I'm intrigued though. So tell us a little bit about you, Ken. Tell us how you got into hiking, ultra running, and then from there, tell us how you got into going barefoot.
Yeah, so I have the benefit of looking back now over many years. And so I remember a formative experience. I was about 12 and the family went to New Hampshire for vacation, and we hiked up Mount Jefferson. And we must have been the original unprepared hikers. We were, in blue jeans, no maps, no compass, no fire starter kit. We just walked. Nobody knew any better or any different. And, I remember that 50 years later. And so I showed up in college and I'm like, I want to go on Outward Bound. So where did that come from, except maybe that formative experience? And that was another formative experience. So, and I'll mention I spent 4 years in the Army, very short military career, peacetime veteran. But part of the reason I chose the Army over the Air Force is I wanted to be outdoors. As odd as that sounds, I'm not sure that's a good reason.
That's not odd.
And, fast forward, career on Wall Street and then corporate America. And I think along the way, as I got closer to age 40, I remembered something from when I was a kid. I did some karate, and we were hanging around and somebody pointed, see that guy over there? He just turned 40 years old. And for his birthday, he ran 40 miles. And we had never heard of anything like that. We were just astonished as kids. And of course, I forgot about that completely until I was 39. So I got into ultra running in my 40s, and it was partly just like at work. I saw people getting sick and dropping by the wayside. And I was like, dude, you better invest in yourself or you won't be around either. So I started running, and then I got into ultra running, and I did that until I began to tear myself apart.
Mm.
And so in my mid 50s, I did a pivot to peak bagging. That's been a focus since, because you can do it slower, right? And it's not about the speed and the distance. And the barefoot angle, I hate to say it, but I read Born to Run, and in fact, all my friends and my mom and everybody else sent me a copy of Born to Run when it first came out, and I was like, barefoot, because that was his thesis, is that shoes can mess you up. So recover your natural gait. And since I was starting to get injured, I decided I would just give it a try. And the weird thing is, it was so much fun. I lost interest in shoes. And now I'm this crazy middle-aged barefoot person. That was never the plan, but that's just how it sort of worked out.
Did you start your barefoot experience in ultra running and the peak bagging and through hiking? Where did that come in during your outdoor career?
Well, the first time I went for a barefoot run, I was probably, in my early 40s, but I had just read Born to Run. So I ran out to a section of trail. It was dirt with, a few rocks. I took off my shoes. I ran 100 yards, if that. And the light bulb went off. I was like, wow, this is different. I have to aim my feet. This is not pounding. This is landing, and I could feel it was different muscles. So I was like, this is very interesting. That was it, 100 yards. Put my shoes back on, and then the light bulb went off again because I was like, wow, what happened to the ground? I can't feel the ground anymore. But that was it for 5 years. I spent 5 years transitioning from conventional shoes to minimalist. And it was only after I got to the point of being able to run in sandals and the Vibram Five Fingers that I decided to do it again. And this time I did like a mile, and it was totally meh. I mean, I was like self-conscious, and I got some scratches, and I'm like, all right, whatever. But the next morning I woke up and my feet were like tingling, and they were like, dude, we we want more. We want more sensation. And I was like, okay. And after that, it became, just a raging obsession. I didn't get into ultras immediately. It took a number of years to get to the point where, I could do it without injuring myself, because it's different. And just to state the obvious, don't go out and it's very hard to go out and do like an ultra in the mountains barefoot. I don't think that's going to work out well for most of us. I just did a 24-hour race. It was in Phoenix, and it was a beautiful, smooth, paved sidewalk. So that's okay. It's hard in the mountains. In the mountains, I just, for the most part, pretty much walk.
Okay. That's what I was wondering too. I was like, man, how do you do this with barefoot in the mountains? But you do peak bag though barefoot.
Mm-hmm.
So you are coming across a lot of rocks, a lot of grit, a lot of things. And so what is that experience like?
Well, there's type 1 fun, right, which is chilling and watching Netflix or whatever. There's type 2 fun, which is like running or ultra running, where it's challenging. And then there's this type 3 fun where it's like totally out of control. And barefoot sometimes is type 3. So I mean, the reality is barefoot is going to be very slow in the mountains and very limited distance compared to anything you do in shoes. And shoes are a great technology. So I was just out in Phoenix, and, it's 2 miles to the top of Sunrise Peak, a little peak outside of the town. And I'd done it once before. I remembered it as being a sandy trail. And I got there, and it was sandy for about 5 yards. The rest was rocks.
Wow.
And I got up to the top, and I'm like, no. And I pulled my shoes out to get back down. But then I did the Fremont Saddle. That's in the Superstition Mountains. And that was a gorgeous trail because it was hard packed sand, plus the tuff, the volcanic ash compressed rock, which is smooth. And so the thing is, it's wildly different. It can be just so much fun, and it can be really hard, painstaking work, one step at a time, where 5 miles or 3 miles or 2 miles, you're like, I'm done.
I feel like if you'd gone a bit further north into the Mazet Sols,
it
would have been a very different story, because we did the AZT, and that was the most miserable section
The
of the entire
rocks
trail.
were so bad. So the Born to Run book compelled you to try the barefoot lifestyle, but did you see a connection between psychologically help? Because I know that people talk about grounding,
Yep.
After you travel or anything like that. Like if your body's feeling off, if you go outside barefoot and just put your feet on the grass, like it's supposed to ground you and help you. But I'm wondering, coming from, constantly moving, how has that helped you psychologically? Because clearly you're still doing it. So there's something to this that has brought something to your life, I'm assuming.
It's the endorphins.
Yeah. So, there's some theories about grounding. Some people think it stimulates the flow of ions and electricity into the body. And look, that sounds a little bit strange to me, but I'm not a physicist, so I don't know. To me, grounding is psychological. And I found it to be very powerful. And that's part of the reason I go around mostly without shoes, even in the cities. Unless it's really cold. And I do wear shoes at work because it's a team, a sport, not about, me trying to be just, different. But I'll tell you a funny story. I was at work, this was a couple of years ago, and, I got a new project and I drank a lot of coffee and I was all amped up. And I hopped in my, rental car to go back to the hotel and pulled out and I was like, oh, I forgot about the construction. And so, I'm moving forward at 2 miles an hour and blood pressure, going through the roof. And I finally got through the mess and got to a grocery store to pick up, something for dinner. And I'm like, I need a break. So I took off my shoes and I walked to the parking lot. The parking lot was warm, afternoon sun, and a little prickly. And then I walked into the grocery store and it's smooth and it's cool. And like that totally got me refocused on the act of moving. And all the nonsense got pushed out. And so I have this theory that, we're so distracted in the modern world, right? That if you just engage in the original act of moving mindfully, it totally reconnects all those circuits in your brain that are there to guide, soft feet on rough terrain. And if you don't use those circuits, they're going to be distracted and they're going to be fussing about what your boss said or your spouse or what the latest outrage on social media or whatever it is. So I find it very focusing and very calming, and a lot of other folks do. So I think that is a common reaction to the practice.
Wow.
So on your website, it says that you're an analyst. What exactly do you analyze? Because I'm sure any level of analyst is going to be extremely taxing on like your mental capacity.
Yeah. An analyst who studies businesses, and what I used to do is recommend stocks. So a Wall Street research analyst, and now working on corporations, I help manage the strategic planning process and the investor communications. So it's all right brain stuff.
Yeah.
It's all right brain stuff. And the rest of me doesn't get engaged. So what I love about, I think you and your listeners, it's all the same thing. We get that original, full mind body engagement from being outdoors in nature, which in, your office, you're only using a small portion of your capabilities.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was going to say, I think, man, haven't done the barefoot yet. Who knows? Maybe I'll try it. But I did dance a long time, and I would dance barefoot. I didn't wear the slippers or anything. I would like to dance barefoot, which I did find a grounding piece for me of holistic lifestyle when I would do that, because I would process a lot of emotions and mental things going on through dance. And I think about that now. I've stopped dancing, barefoot. And I've stopped dancing, and I'm like, I wonder what that did for me in that season now that I look back at it. But it's just fascinating you say that, because I think in through hiking, though, there is this, the EMDR thing that everyone talks about. I went to trauma therapy back in my late 20s, and we talked a lot about EMDR. And she was saying how when I was ultra running, because I ultra ran a lot during that time, and I was working through trauma. And my therapist was like, this is really good for you because you're working out things, because you're using both sides of your brain. And that begins the EMDR process inside of you. And so if things start to come out of you, just sit in that moment, embrace it, recognize it, and love on it. And then keep moving through it. And I was like, this is so fascinating. So when we started through hiking, it was just like, you're so mindful of every part of your body. Every part of your body just comes awake, and your mind comes awake, your emotion, like everything just feels like one. Everything feels unified in that place, and it's quiet. It's not stressed out. It's not freaking out about culture, or like you said, it's like there's not any of that happening in my brain when I am constantly moving like that, which I think is so fascinating. We need to have a psychologist on this just to like, or a neurologist. But have you come to find that to be barefoot, especially? Have you come to find that holistic feeling of just being one with yourself in that?
I think absolutely. And I have this, like just walking down the street to the coffee shop. It's like free joy with every step. And, that's not going to, I would rather go out and, do some hikes on the weekend or do a run or a race. But these little steps, I just pick up a little bit of joy with each step. And part of it's the concentration. There's a really interesting book you might enjoy. It's a funny little book. It's called The Barefoot Manifesto. And it's by a woman named Bunny Fitzgerald. And she's on Instagram. And she was at a low point. She was struggling with, relationship and other kinds of issues. And she just decided to rebel, and she threw away her shoes and just decided to start living barefoot. And there's a really interesting statement in the book. She said that when she was younger, she studied and she read, and she felt like she needed all this information to plan out her life. And what she discovered by going barefoot is that sensation is more powerful than information. And it's sort of like it maybe gets the whole mind body thing working together. And without the sensation, it's just endless calculations. So that's how I feel. I think she did a great job of articulating that point. And that's something that Thoreau wrote about 150 years ago. He said, he was very skeptical about technology, but also about knowledge. He says a lot of knowledge is just conceit. It's just egotism. And he wanted sympathy with intelligence, which to me is that feeling of connection. So, I have, I want to do my job and make a contribution to the world, but I have an insatiable hunger for connection with nature. And so that's why, even like I said, just walking down the street, it's a chance for a little incremental connection. And I'm like, yeah, thank you.
It sounds like the common thread here is detachment from the natural world. And, you could look at that in a lot of different ways, but let's just take the shoe, for example. So placing a barrier between you and nature. And I understand the practicality of it because not all terrain is meant for like a bare human foot, especially colder weather. But, it's just another example of man like creating and quote unquote conquering nature and that connectivity with nature to have dominion over a shoe. If you really think about it, a shoe is an example of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I sort of like to, to be honest, I sort of like to make the statement. And so a lot of times I'll surprise people by showing up barefoot, but I think it's a statement I'm comfortable making, which is just, hey, a reminder that we cut ourselves off from nature. And ultimately, it's like the sawing the branch that you're sitting on, right? We disconnect. And that's the question. You disconnect yourself from nature. You disconnect yourself from yourself. That's, I think, one of the side effects.
Yeah. And we've kind of been, juggling with this a little bit because so this season we're trying to focus more on community instead of like the elitism of being a high tier ultra runner or being a thru hiker who's not broken a footpath. And when you talk to other thru hikers, they use terms like muggle, and we've even used cotton world quite a lot. But the people who are not these extreme athletes, and you talk about them as if they're in a different bracket, but we're really trying to focus on people just getting outside, because more people getting outside means more connectivity with nature.
Yeah.
And that's really how you start the movement for people wanting to conserve and protect what we have. Because right now we're just rapidly diminishing our natural resources because we look at it like a resource. It's a commodity. And so just trying to focus on more, I guess, harmony with our natural world. So the whole barefoot thing might seem kind of like weird and nebulous to people, but it's a really great way to connect to the area that you're in.
It's a great analogy of so many things I didn't even think about until we're getting into this conversation. And I'm like, wow, shoes really are the definition of creating a barrier between what life nature is to us. And I mean, I think about it when I was a kid, I used to go outside barefoot. Like we lived in just a beautiful woodsy nature area. And I'd just go out barefoot all the time. But then my parents would be like, put your shoes on, because they didn't want me to get injured or something to happen. And I just think about how we've kind of become this idea of civilization and how we have to do these certain practices in life. And I love that you just go walk down to the coffee shop barefoot, like it's no big deal. And also I think my question is because I know some restaurants won't accept you without shoes on.
Or stations.
Or gas stations, no shoes, no service. But I mean, have you actually found that to be, what has that been like socially, the dynamic?
Well, it's an interesting practice because you're putting yourself out there, right? And you're doing something that's very different because there are not a lot of barefoot people. By the way, you go back to the 60s and the hippies went barefoot, and there's lots of pictures of people going barefoot.
Yeah.
Or if you go to places like New Zealand or Australia, there's still some relic barefoot culture, like the kids go to school barefoot and you see them walking home.
Wow.
But it's a good practice because, one of the great tensions in life is, I want to live my life. I want to live your life. I want to live my life, but I got to get along with other people. So how we negotiate that tension, which is always there, right? And when you go barefoot, you're going to surprise some people. So you have to be prepared to negotiate it. And nobody likes to be lectured and told what to do, especially if it doesn't make any sense. Like I went to the the bar in the hotel the other night to get a hamburger, and the bartender was like, "Well, we don't want you to get hurt." And I was like, I just ran a marathon yesterday with no shoes, so I think I can make it to the elevator. But she was insistent, and I usually carry a pair of slippers with me. So I'm like, what she's really saying is she's not sure if she could get in trouble. Maybe the other patrons might be offended.
Yeah.
And I have the choice of leaving, or I pull out my little slippers and put them on. And what I'm trying to do is solve for good karma.
Giveaway alert. When you're 15 miles into your day and your climb is just getting started, every ounce matters. You need gear that is just as strong as you are without the extra weight. Aardwolf Gear Company crafts intuitive, ultralight accessories for the outdoor enthusiast in you. Using creative design principles and Dyneema composite fabric, they hand make accessories that are durable, waterproof, and designed to withstand the elements you choose. All of their products are cottage made in Flagstaff, Arizona, just a mile from the AZT. From spoon covers to waterproof food bags, Aardwolf gear is made by backpackers for everyone. When Basecamp and I hiked the Arizona Trail in November of last year, we not only cozied our spoons with a little slip cover, but we also put our full-size toothbrushes, not the sawed-off ones, into their little color-coded sleeves so we could tell them apart. We also stuffed our electronics into a waterproof ditty bag and stored our food in a roll-top sack that we knew would keep our food protected from winter condensation without breaking our backs. Every single bit of it was Aardwolf gear. If you go to aardwolfgear.com and plug in the code YETI15, that is YETI15, you can get 15% off of your entire order at checkout. And as a way of saying thank you to the beautiful world that inspires their work through Earth Day, which is April 22nd, Aardwolf Gear will be donating 10% of all profits from their new green-colored items to Conservation Legacy. That's a nonprofit organization working to support the next generation of conservation leaders. If you'd like to try out one of their trowel bags, you can snag one free of charge if you're the first person to shoot an email over to yetiwalksintobasecamp@gmail.com with a story. We want to know what the heaviest backpack is that you have ever carried out into the natures. Be the first to send us that story, and we'll reach out to you via email to get you that free trowel bag from Aardwolf Gear. Thank you, Aardwolf, for sponsoring this podcast and this episode.
Now, I mentioned, I'll share that story, which I teased about the Chase branch. This was in Phoenix. And I walked into a Chase branch and I had some, do some business. I'm a happy Chase customer. The security guard was really upset. He's like, "You can't be in here barefoot. That's wrong. That's against the law." By the way, it's not against the law. But he was really upset. He was really upset. And I was going to argue. And then I noticed he was wearing a bulletproof vest. And he had a 9mm on his belt. And I was like, you know what? Getting into a fight is Probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
So I said, well, can I get the branch manager's card and I'll leave? And he said, you stand outside and I'll bring it to you. And a minute later, I stood outside. A minute later, a woman came out and she was the assistant branch manager. And she was like, come on, you're okay. So she had overruled the guard. And it's funny, I sat down with the banker to get this stuff taken care of. And he was like, barefoot, you're trying to connect.
Hmm.
And I was like, yeah, that's it. So he got it. And on the way out, the security guard was, standing there with his arms crossed. He had been overruled. He was pissed off. And I was like, dude, thank you for being patient. This wasn't personal. Just have a good day.
Hmm.
Huh.
Not trying to take a victory lap at his expense. I think, the more we can spread good karma instead of getting people agitated and making them even angrier. Because who's really good at getting people angry? The media and our politicians.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
world class at it. And now they
Boy.
have, big data, AI, and everything else to help them. So if we can go through life and keep the
Hmm.
waters calm, it's hard, right? Because we all
Yeah.
get, nobody wants to be bossed around or told they're wrong or whatever. But
Yeah.
that's what the practice teaches you. It teaches you, if you're going to be out there, how are you going to manage yourself with other people?
Wow.
Good point. We've distanced ourselves from social media, but now we look at the news and I'm like, this is no better. It really is not.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I find it fascinating what a strong reaction he had to it. Like, what? I don't know. I think psychologically, we have strong reactions to certain things because we're scared or something's happened but it's like, why would someone have such a strong reaction to you just being barefoot versus, I don't know. It's like,
What's against societal norms? I mean,
Yeah.
if you were to go into a restaurant and say you're opposed to using deodorant and you had a funk to you, like,
I mean, that's through hikers.
I mean, it's
let's
through
be
hikers.
honest.
and
Right, hiker trash.
exactly.
They don't
And-
want us in restaurants half the time.
You're ostracized. You are, just because of how you look and how you smell. I mean, you could be the nicest or wealthiest or even a pastor, and you could still be kicked out just because of how you are presenting yourself in that moment.
It's true. We do
Yeah,
live in
yeah.
a society of presentation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a very specific theory because there's this coffee shop in in Chicago, and I went in there once, and the person behind the counter was like, "You can't come in here like that." And so I pulled out my slippers because I carry them for those kinds of situations. And I was standing next to a guy in line, and he was like, "You know what? You were prepared." And I was like, "Yeah," because I had been there before and encountered this person before. So as I'm waiting to get my coffee, I'm sort of watching her out of the corner of my eye, and she's not. This is my speculation, but she's not a happy person. So I think we all have these times when we feel the world is after us, and then we get surprised by somebody who's doing something we're not used to, and
Hmm.
it upsets us because it's another example of the world messing with us. And sometimes you lash out at a person because of something else that's bothering you. And I've been guilty of that. I know,
Yeah.
so somebody gets upset, just try not to make it worse, disengage, retreat, throw some smoke grenades and to cover your retreat. But yeah, I feel like that's where people come from. It's interesting to me statistically. I have more encounters in the Northeast than the Southwest. I think people
Really?
maybe in the Southwest are a little bit more chill.
I wonder what would happen if you went to the Southeast.
I know. I mean,
I bet that would be rough.
we're both from the deep South, and it would be probably a mixed bag because they literally have signs in gas stations that say no shoes, no shirt, no service.
Yeah.
Like in a lot of rural town areas, but it's because all these people literally go barefoot everywhere. And so you might have a whole cult following of people in the deep South.
I haven't been in the Southeast. My last job, we were based in the Southeast, but that was before I lost my mind and went down this path. So I'll let you know if I have a chance. Those signs, by the way, people tell me they date back to the 60s, and that was the response to the hippies.
Wow.
So, it's interesting. The hippies, now in hindsight, hippies were into free love and not war.
Uh-huh.
And in hindsight, I think we'd say, good call. But they were sort of crazy. And so, some people were offended or frightened by them. So I think like I've heard you guys saying in some of your podcasts, you want to encourage people to get outdoors and experience nature. But, maybe we don't want to surprise and frighten them and startle them too much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to go out and start a through hike cold turkey. Just go outside and spend a few hours.
Yeah.
Go out for a couple
Yeah.
miles and just
Yeah.
feel nature and feel the heartbeat. Yeah, that's what I always love.
Or go walk barefoot in a parking lot like you did.
Yeah.
Maybe not everyone's cup of tea, but I mean, if you're looking for quick and easier ways to connect, like, yes, social inequity is a problem, but for a lot of people, there are
Mhm.
places where you can go outside and disconnect. Even walking outside of the building, you're still breathing air and you're
Yeah.
still hearing sounds outside of, the four wall and a roof setting. I'm going to read off a few menu items here. Let's see how they sound. Crawfish etouffee, chicken tikka masala, and Mexican street corn grits. That sounds like the specials for a restaurant you would expect to find in the South, right? Believe it or not, these are actually backpacking meals that you can eat out in the middle of nowhere on the dirt with an epic sunset backlighting the mountains. Sarah and Brett Bolin, founders of Bowl and Kettle, wanted to do just that. Feast on amazing meals when camping out in the middle of friggin' nowhere. So they decided to create their own freeze-dried, not dehydrated, backpacking meals with first ingredients like butter, marinated chicken breast, whole milk, and Monterey Jack cheese. Basecamp and I happily carried several Bowl and Kettle meals with us on both the Colorado Trail and the Arizona Trail last year, and we never once regretted carrying a single ounce of those. Sarah and Brett have perfected the 3 meals they currently offer, undoubtedly with more coming in the future, and they want you to try some of the backcountry goodness for yourselves. They've given us a 10% discount code to share with you, our listeners. Head over to bowlandkettle.com, pick out your favorite variety pack, whatever floats your boat, and plug in the code YETICHOW at checkout. That is YETICHOW to get 10% off of your entire order. Thank you, Sarah and Brett, for sponsoring this podcast and this episode.
I do have another question for you that's been mulling over in my mind. Have you had a really, I don't want to say a bad thing that's happened with your feet? Like, did you get them cut or anything? I always want to hear those stories of like, what was your worst encounter with your feet? Did you have any gruesome stories?
Not really. I mean, I did a trail marathon in Texas, and I stepped on a thorn. And it was about halfway through, and I was like, oh, should I stop? And I kept going, and I got to the end, and afterwards, after eating my barbecue and limping back to the car, I was like, oh my.
Wait, you kept running with the thorn inside your foot?
Well, I didn't know there was a thorn inside my foot. I just know I had stepped on, I had misstepped a little bit, and a stick had rolled under my foot and exposed a point. So I thought it was just a scratch. So the next morning, I was like, this hurts. I better take a look at it. And I pulled out my reading glasses and my tweezers and pulled out a thorn, and then it was better.
Nice.
Wow.
So, I slid in the superstition. I climbed Superstition Peak and I stepped on a cactus at the top. It hurt for 10 minutes and then it was fine. I mean, feet are pretty tough. And here's the thing, feet are mission critical equipment. You think about our ancestors, if they couldn't move, eventually they would get left behind.
Yeah, they're left for dead.
That's a good
because
point.
the tribes would move on. And so feet are, and they're going to stop you. If they start to get mad, they're going to be like, this is not working, stop. And you'll end up going really slow. And but it's interesting. I did the John Muir Trail barefoot, and I started thinking, about our ancestors. Maybe who didn't have shoes necessarily, and they would have been so much more nimble than me, and they would have had much tougher feet. But if they had to go somewhere, and their feet would start hurting. Just like mine. So, but I'll say too something. If your feet hurt, they get tired, they'll stop you down, but they're generally better the next day. Whereas if your knees start hurting, right, or your hips or your Achilles tendon, those can be problems that take a long time. So you're shifting load from joints and muscles and tendons to the bottom of your feet, and your bottom of your feet have been evolving for a long time to deal with that. So it can be painful and slow, but I've not experienced, and I've been doing it for like 10 years. And in my training log, I just got to 15,000 miles of barefoot running, hiking, and even just walking. All of this is training. It doesn't count going to the coffee shop. And besides that thorn and occasional scratches, nothing really serious to report.
I bet you've developed some pretty intense calluses on the bottom of your feet too, right?
Yeah, but their feet never get as strong as rocks.
Sure.
And the rocks come in different flavors. Like some are smooth and they're
Different
easy, and
flavors. I love that.
and some are pointy and they just slow me down. And I get mad. I'm like, I've been doing this for 10 years and I still struggle, but that's part of, that's part of the full range of the contrast. If it was just easy, you'd be back to watching Netflix,
Yeah.
right? So it's that full range, and that's what makes it super intense. Because
Hmm.
in shoes everything is the same, but in bare feet, oh, the rocks are aggravating. But then you step on moss
Yeah.
or a smooth slab or
Mm.
soft dirt, and the contrast is just totally magical.
That makes me think that because when you're running or ultra running, something I experience is like that euphoria of like your brain is just so focused into knowing exactly where to go with what rock or as you're running down a mountain or something. And I wonder now, I'm thinking if you're barefoot, do you go into an interesting euphoric focus of knowing exactly where to step?
Yeah, and I mean, there's hand-eye coordination. And by the way, don't ask me about hand-eye coordination. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a baseball star, but I would always close my I'd always close my eyes when the ball came to me, so I didn't get very far. But there's also foot-eye coordination,
Hmm.
and it's really remarkable. And that's something that's been evolving in us and our animal ancestors for millions of years. So I found like hiking at night and without lights, right? So you're relying on ambient starlight and moonlight, and there are just these little glimmers of light on the ground, and maybe the dirt turns like ink black, and
Mm.
there's a smooth rock, and it's just a faint, glimmer. But you can really move your feet to where they need to go, and it's sort of remarkable. Now, if it gets too dark, you can't. But if there's just enough light to see those glimmers, it's sort of cool. And so, yeah, when you're going, you are aiming your feet, and it took a little while on the John Muir Trail, where you go up the passes and you have these cobbles, right? The cobbles, so these are nice rocks, actually. They're, grapefruit size, and there's always a flat face.
Yeah.
Gravel is harder because now it's too small and pointy and there's nothing to do.
Mhm.
But you say there's a flat space that I can put my heel and then the ball of my foot, maybe bridge. And it took a little while before I realized that. But then once you get into it, it becomes automatic. So it's like the trail running. It's very focused. But here's the difference. Is when I first started trail running, I banged my feet all over the place and I lost some toenails. And your feet are going to teach you real fast not to do that when you're barefoot.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, no, don't do that. We're not going to let you move at all if you bang us. So you get really precise in what you're doing very quickly.
Wow.
Mm. The literally the one time that I went barefoot on the Pacific Crest Trail was during a water crossing. I was too lazy to get my Crocs out, and would you believe I broke a toe doing the water crossing because I
Again.
slipped and hit it just the wrong
Oh,
way.
the green slime of death.
The green
Yeah.
slime of death.
That was
got me.
it.
And that was in the high Sierras. I was like, God, what a terrible place to do this.
I can't remember. I'm sure I've slipped in bare feet, but I
Oh
can't
yeah.
actually remember that if any instances. But and here's something to remember as you get older. As you get older, things break easier. And,
Mm.
and you probably heard once you're past 50 years, and you guys don't have to worry about this for a while. Once you're past 50 years, the number one cause of emergency room visits is slipping and falling. And that's in shoes on sidewalks, right? Mostly.
Whoa.
So over the last year, I've slipped a couple of times. Oh my goodness. And I hurt my knee. Well, the knee was already hurt. And the other time I hurt my quad, but it was both times in
Huh.
shoes.
Hmm.
In bare feet, I can't remember. I'm sure I have, but I can't remember slipping. It's very rare because you can't afford to. You can't afford to be flailing around. It makes you very precise, and it sounds like, well, how weird it is that we have to step so precisely. But
Hmm.
if you were barefoot your whole life, it would just be natural.
Yeah.
And so, really, shoes allow you to be
Wow.
sloppy, and it's one of the bad habits. And look, a lot of people wear shoes through their whole life, and they're fine. But the shoes can, for some people, mess you up. They can make you sloppy. Or when I was a kid, I had terrible chronic shin splints. And I think in hindsight, that was from those old fashioned running shoes with the huge squishy heels that first started coming out in the 1970s. Those messed me up
Mm.
terribly.
Yeah.
I ended up getting surgery eventually for it, which is probably unnecessary, but they can have that. And it's all we're saying. Look, shoes are a great technology, but there's always a cost
Yeah.
to every technology. Might be a
Yeah.
small cost and a big benefit, but you just want to be mindful.
I think that's interesting. You saying that, like, because when I got into ultra running, I was having knee problems because I didn't know anything about the way you're supposed to, your gait and like the balls of your feet, like it's supposed to be a natural thing with your feet, and how, because of the technology of shoes, it's messed up the way that we walk, the way we run. And people typically do heel toe now. And how Hoka especially has like created, this cushion in the back for people because to like compensate for what's happening, but how so many people are having knee problems. And my mom, especially, like she unfortunately had to have a knee replacement. And I was watching her walking and she walks on her heels and she locks her knees. And I was like, Mom, you're locking your knees every time you walk. And that's like creating a shock in your knee and it's hurting your knee. And you're not like tiptoeing almost like with your balls of your feet. And I can see how when you're barefoot, you will naturally step in the balls of your feet mostly to like land properly in the gait. Like your body's just going to line up with it correctly. Instead of the shoe just gives you this lazy way to walk.
Mm-hmm.
I've just never thought about it until you're saying this. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, and we actually tried Hoka's and we ended up returning them because there was so much cushion we could hardly tell what we were walking or running on. And several times I lost my footing and I felt unsafe running in them. So I, reverted back to ultras. We used the Ultra Lone Peaks, not the Superiors, which have a little bit less cushion. But yeah. Have you tried the barefoots before, like the Vibram 5-fingers?
I've never tried the barefoot.
I tried them.
You did?
Yeah, I love them except for the fact that my feet would make them super smelly. Like they stink pretty badly.
They do get smelly, yeah. The other thing, if you're bushwhacking through the forest, like ferns and things get stuck in the toes.
Ah.
Ow.
But that happens in bare feet too. Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's great that there's people have options. So I know obviously a lot of people swear by the Hokas and love them, but I think the combination of shoes and sedentary lifestyles that's problematic for many of us. Like I said, when I was young, not only did I have chronic shin splints, but I had really bad posture and a sensitive low back, and what we lose with shoes and sedentary is core engagement. And so what I've found is really using the butt, the butt muscles. I remember a physical therapist told me, Ken, runners have weak butts. They don't use their butt muscles. And of course I was like, well, that's not me. but going barefoot has, taught me a little bit better alignment. And you can land on your heels, you can land on the ball of your feet. What's key is the core strength, not even the strength, but just the engagement, because that's your cushion, right? And you can't slam either part of your foot into the ground if there's rocks and things.
Maybe we should update your name to Barefoot Big Booty Ken.
Sure.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. As long as Basecamp and I can remember, we have carried Sawyer products with us. Specifically, we are huge fans of the Sawyer Squeeze, which has been our go-to water filtration system since we've been backpacking. We always rely on it in the backcountry, and we do take a little bit of a redundancy with us on occasion. We'll take a water chemical treatment as well. It's a great idea to have a backup. What we want to say is that Sawyer has always been there. It's always given us peace of mind when we knew that we had water coming up, even if it might be a little bit sketchy, especially from some of those cow ponds out in the Arizona trail. So we just want to fully endorse Sawyer, tell you to go and check out some of the stuff that they have to offer. You can get the Sawyer Squeeze. You can get some mini versions if you want to shave off a little bit of weight from your backpack. They also have treatment for your gear that you can use to try and keep the bugs at bay whenever summer and spring are in full swing. And they have some pretty cool looking swag if you go and check out their website. Right now, through Yeti Walks into Basecamp, they're offering a 20% discount to anyone listening. So go and check out their website, and at checkout, just plug in the code Yeti Basecamp. That is YETI BASECAMP at checkout to get 20% off of your entire purchase at Sawyer. Thank you so much, Sawyer, for sponsoring this podcast and this episode. I wanted to get back to the nuts and bolts of your quote unquote CV. So what through hikes have you done, and which of those were barefoot, if any?
So I did a through run of the long path in New York. And by the way, I'd love to give you an engraved invitation to come out and do the long path in New York. And you'll love it. It's wild. It's not quite, the alpine splendor of, out west, but it's
Sure.
a beautiful trail through the loveliest parts of the Hudson Valley, including the Catskills, and Harriman and other cool places. And so I know the people who manage the long path, so I can get you not only in engraved invitation, but people will help you figure it out and plan it, whatever. And it's so much easier than the John Muir Trail because, New York is fairly built up. There's lots of roads, there's lots of options. Like the John Muir Trail and other trails, the logistics are quite complicated. So I ran the long path in 2013 in shoes and set the record for it. And that record has subsequently been broken a couple of times. And in fact, a woman named Kim Levinsky just set the female record just last year. But whatever pace you do, it's a lovely, lovely experience. And then the other long distance trail I've done is the John Muir Trail. And during the pandemic, I just got this crazy. I was flying on an airplane from San Fran to LA, and I looked out the window, and it was the alpenglow for the evening, the western sun.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh my. I had heard that John Muir called it the range of light. And I was like, I need to get out there and experience this. And then the pandemic hit, and I was just starting to get into the barefoot. And I like out of the blue, I was like, I'm going to go out there and do it barefoot. I had no idea what the terrain was like. So it's just a wild,
Boy.
crazy idea. The first year I went out and did about 70% of it barefoot, and I got stuck going down. You guys have been out because you've done the PCT, so you know it.
Yeah.
Muir Trail Ranch, right? Coming from the north,
Yeah.
past Senger Creek, it goes down steeply. It's a southern aspect. It's exposed. It's hot. It's rocky. It's steep, and I couldn't. I had to put my shoes on.
We did that sucker in May, so all we saw was snow. We couldn't
Yeah.
see actually much of the geology.
Yeah, there's not. I mean, it's all manzanita scrub, and I was like going down. I saw a little tiny tree, and like 3 feet of shade, and I'm like, if I could just make it to that, let my feet cool off. This was in August, so I came back the next year, and I couldn't get a hold of the resupply train, the mule train. So I hiked down to what is it, Independence. And I was like, I can't make it back up. So I got 80% of it done. And then finally came back in 2022 and did the whole thing barefoot, which was the goal. And that was a cool experience. All 3 trips were cool experiences. So that's my through hiking. But you guys, listening to you guys, I'm like, it would be fun to do some more. But here's what I struggle with. I struggle with balance, right?
Uh-huh.
Because I do all this peak bagging, but that doesn't do anything for my running. So I've got to try and balance running and peak bagging, and then of course through hiking wouldn't help either of those. So I struggle, like the kid in the candy shop. But Arizona Trail
Yeah.
sounds like fun, not knowing much about it. But besides that, you need to know where your water is going to come from, right?
If you've done Arizona stuff, then you liked it, you'd probably like the Arizona Trail because it is definitely iconic. Desert, but also mountains. Superstitions go through. I mean, Arizona Trail goes through the superstitions, which was probably one of my favorite parts of the trail. I mean, but you got so much different terrain in Arizona. I was shocked how much different ecosystems you go through.
Yeah, and we don't know what the current status is because I think that like a large portion of the north section
shut
was
down
closed because of the fires.
Oh.
Like 100 miles
Okay.
to the
Yeah.
Grand. Yeah, and a lot of people were dipping in past
Grand Canyon.
the Grand Canyon rim. And I think they were starting past the Grand Canyon, unfortunately, because of the burn. So you would have to go through a burn section once they reopened it from the beginning till the Grand Canyon, like a good portion. I think might have been 80 miles of the trail got burned. It was really sad, which it was like Ponderosa Pines. It's some of the most beautiful areas of the Arizona Trail too.
Yeah. I will always be a proponent of recommending the Colorado Trail.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we're biased because we live here, of course, but mile for mile, you start in a woodland, and then once you get to mile 60, you're pretty much up in it. I mean, you're in the mountains, you dip into trees, back up in the mountains. So it's really lovely. And there's a little bit of scree, but they've been doing a good deal of trail maintenance, and even the areas that allow dirt bikes and mountain bikes. They've been trying to level out those deep ruts that the bikes have created.
I was out there. I've been out there the last couple of summers just for a few day hikes, and I saw them working on the trail.
Oh yeah,
And they do I was on coming down from Handy's, I think, and they said they do a nice job out there.
The Jolly Gear motto is "Where fun meets functional," and the owner Jolly truly wears that motto on his sleeve. Blending the comfort of a button-down with the sun protection of a sun shirt, Jolly Gear creates tops and dresses from an 84% polyester, 16% spandex blend that dries quickly and offers antimicrobial properties. With color patterns like disco leopard, kaleidoscope, pool party, and trail madness, you can expect only the most epic of double takes when walking by hikers on a trail with your Jolly Gear on. When we hiked the PCT in 2022, we made it to Bernie Falls only to have our sun shirts literally dissolving on our bodies. We reached out to Jolly Gear, and he, free of charge, expedited 2 matching Casa orange sun shirts to us in Redding, California. We finished the trail in those shirts and still have them to this day. Marie especially loved the ponytail hole in the back of the hood that allowed for sun protection without discomfort when she wanted to stick a bun or a ponytail through it. You can snag 15% off of your order at jollygear.com by using the code YETI at checkout. That's YETI at checkout to get 15% off of your entire purchase at jollygear.com. Crafted by a thru hiker for anyone who loves to go for a walk outside, check out jollygear.com to outfit your next hike with some high personality sun protection where fun meets functional. Thank you, Jolly, for sponsoring this episode and this podcast.
Have you guys been in the Superstition Mountains? Have you seen Weaver's Needle?
I don't remember much about where. I just remember we went through the Superstitions after the Mazet cells.
The majority of the trail took us through the Superstitions in Burn Scar.
But there was a section that was really beautiful. We had to climb, and then we hit Phoenix after that. You could see Phoenix in the backdrop. I'm trying to think. I don't think we might have seen it in the distance. Because I just remember it was really beautiful, and there was a lot of beautiful mountains in the distance.
I've got a friend in Phoenix, and she's been begging me to move out, abandon New York and move out there. But I did this hike in the Superstition Mountains, and it's only 2 miles there and back, so it's 4 miles total. But you get up to the saddle, and there's this view of Weaver's Needle, which just is like 1,000-foot tower.
Wow.
And I got up there, and it was all socked in, and then the mist parted, and there was the needle. And I was like, oh my. You see these things sometimes, and it's like, that's not just a coincidence. It's not just random. The mountains are telling me something. Or maybe it is random, but I happened to be here, so I saw it. And that was magic. And then I was coming down from Superstition Peak, and that was where that was tough, very steep. The trail is ringed with cacti, so if you stumble, you're going to be impaled. And I put on my shoes to come down, and that's where I slipped. And my meniscus was already sore, so that was very painful and very slow. But as I was coming down, there was one of these Phoenix sunsets, and it just turned incredible, bright red, the whole sky. And again, I was just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And, you see things like that, and you're like, my knee hurts. I'm out here doing this stupid, barefoot hike, trying to, climb more mountains. But evidently, this is the right thing to do, because otherwise I would not have seen this.
Those Arizona sunsets
are the most beautiful.
They even, they beat Colorado.
Yeah, the sunrises and sunsets of Arizona were probably some of my favorite things about that trail. They're just gorgeous.
I don't know how they do it, but we have beautiful skies in New York, but not the same.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would love to talk about your book, Ken, Chasing
Books. He's got several books.
Well, you have several books. Do you want to talk? Yeah. Let's talk about all of your books, and then we can talk about the one you want to feature. But
yeah, let's talk about your wares here.
Yeah. But what was the first book that you wrote?
Well, I wrote one business book. But I'm not going to get into that because like, again, I'm proud of my work and making a contribution, but then I'm like, okay, it's not the same. There's not
Sure.
the same passion. So that's great. And so my first book about what we care about was running the long path. So it
Mhm.
was my experience of through running the trail. The book I've just published is called Chasing the Grid, and it's about the experience I had doing a big peak bagging project in New York in the Catskill Mountains. And it's interesting. I'm learning a little bit about the peak bagging culture in the West, which is a little bit different. But in the Northeast, we tend to have official high peak lists. So, like in the
Mm.
Catskills, there are, by convention, 35 high peaks. And in the Adirondacks, there are 46. And in New Hampshire, there's 48. There are official lists that everybody agrees with. And you hike those and you get a patch or a certificate.
Whoa.
The grid takes it to the next level. To complete the grid, you have to do that list of 35 high peaks in the Catskills in each month of the year. And it doesn't have to be 1 year. Sometimes people will go out and do an entire grid in 1 year, but most of the time we do it over a multi-year period. So in the Catskills, it's 35 times 12 is 420 peaks.
Wow.
And these aren't alpine peaks. These are mostly hike ups. A number of them are bushwhacks, so you don't have official trails. So you have some extra challenge in the Catskills. But it's 420 peaks. And the reason for this is very simple. And the first person to do it just said, hey, look, the more you get out and into nature, the more you have a chance to see things.
Hmm.
And I
Mm.
think a lot of us respond to a structure because it takes that energy and it allows us to focus it on a measurable objective. And it's also, it's socially meaningful because the grid is a big project and only a small number of people have done it. It's sort of back to that egotism issue. And so you're like, well, I did the grid. And, a little bit of ego to get you out the door to do something notable is okay, as long as you don't turn into a flaming, asshole about it. So
Agreed.
the book is the story of how I found out about and then got the grid done. And I like to point out that it was sort of a pivot for me because I was doing this ultra running, right? And that was helping to balance out, the intensity of Wall Street and corporate America type jobs, right? And a lot of people are like that.
Yeah.
And I did more and more ultra running and I got a little bit older and I began to injure myself.
Hmm.
All right. So all of a sudden, one engine on my two engine plane is starting to, a little bit of smoke is coming out of the back of it. And at the same time, I had a cool job, but the company was starting to run out of opportunities.
Okay.
Mm.
And in fact, the board decided to put it up for sale. So there was really nothing going on for a period of time. So now both my engines were starting to run out of thrust or fuel, and I was starting to slip into a funk. And kept thinking about Henry David Thoreau and how he wrote that the majority of people live lives of quiet desperation. And I was like, hey, that's about to be me. Unless these injuries heal or I go out and find some new job that's exciting. And the injuries weren't healing.
Hmm.
Mm.
Because if you push, long enough, you can have some cycles that are chronic and you don't even know whether you'll ever heal it. It could be a permanent problem or it might just take a while, particularly as you get older and everything takes longer. So the grid ended up being the most important project of my life for a period because I was like, wow, here's a project that's not an ultra marathon. It's not going to be super intense. It could be a 4 mile hike, but it's going to be longer. It's a big project that takes place over 1 or 2 or 3 years instead of a 100-mile race that takes place over 36 hours. And I can go slowly and I can just check off the boxes as I go along. And it became super, super important to me. But it was also, I was in my mid 50s and after working for years, right? And after doing all this running and hiking outside of work, I felt like I had a desperate hunger for more nature. So it wasn't enough. I needed a lot more. And so the grid gave me the chance to get outdoors and get more of that nature. And then the fun thing was to learn about the views, the trails, the mountains, the plants, the birds, the mushrooms, the lichens, the moss, but also about myself, right? And so these projects, if you're mindful about them, whatever kind of project it is, it's a chance to observe yourself in a more natural environment. And you start to learn, hey, I am actually pretty egotistical
Yeah.
because when I'm out in the forest, all of a sudden it's quiet. And that voice that's like, you got to be better. That person is wrong. That voice goes quiet because there's nothing to get angry at. And so it's just a great chance. It's like a pilgrimage, a great chance to take yourself offline and rediscover sort of the natural side of who you are. Find some of that passion from the natural world and bring it into the work environment and, hopefully sort of integrate the two parts of life. So that's the story of the book.
I feel like society kind of creates this unnecessary desperation in people because they're comparing themselves to other folks' lives or their endeavors, their accomplishments. Yeah, nature is definitely a wonderful teacher, probably the best teacher in my opinion, except for my wife. She's a great teacher.
Oh, okay.
Giveaway
alert. So Ken has been gracious enough to do 3 giveaways of his book. So if you are the first 3 people to email us at yetiwalksintobasecamp@gmail.com, and what we want to hear is, have you ever walked barefoot? If you haven't, then we'd love for you to tell us when you are going to try it so that we can then hear about it after. So if you'll just send us that, and then we'll get your address and we'll get you a copy of Ken's book.
Yep. Again, that's going to be 3 copies. So you have more opportunities to get a copy for yourself, and check out what Ken has been doing here in the Catskills of New
Chasing
York.
the Grid.
With Chasing the Grid. Following this project of the grid, 2-pronged question. What do you feel like you learned about yourself, and what do you feel like nature taught you?
Well, a couple things. I'll go back to that quote on egotism because but part of being an analyst is being very logical and therefore somewhat argumentative. And I hear something that's like, that doesn't make sense to me. And I get sort of cross. It's like irritating. But I had this epiphany. It's like there's this voice, the ego, and it's part of who we are, right? But it is the source of a lot of energy, and some of that energy can be very negative. So once I realized it was there, it's not like you can turn it off, but you can recognize it. And then you start interacting with other folks, and it's like, okay, ego, I know you're upset. I know you want to blame them for being wrong, but if we do that, they won't be our friend. So thanks for sharing your point of view, and just have a seat.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make the final decision. There's a part in the book at the end. I was doing my first barefoot half marathon, and I was running very responsibly because I was still healing from these injuries, like my ankle tendon. And the finish line was in sight, and this young dude passes me, and my ego's like, go. So I just hit the afterburners, and I flew past him, which was fun. Then I limped off the course, and my ankle was like, you idiot, you asshole, you fool. So that's, you start to learn. You're like, okay, ego, I get it. You want me to be the best in the world or whatever, but you get your input, and then you sit down at the table and we make it sensible. So that was part of it. But the other way that I really changed a lot was what I would call minimalism. So it's barefoot. And some of it's the Wim Hof stuff, like shirtless in the winter, or natural navigation, no baths, or not carrying any food or water, or even the craziest thing, no bug spray. So, but it's like the mountains were sort of like, dude, see if you can impress us. And we don't mean with technology. We want to see who you are. And I do feel like nature calls out some of our inner strengths. And the inner strengths are not about technology is important, but it's about focus and determination and mindfulness, and learning about the difference between discomfort and real risk. So this wasn't my grand plan to emerge as some crazy minimalist person, but that was part of the transformation as I spent like a lot of time in the mountains.
Wow. Someone just recently told us this, and I held on to it, but they were saying that trails, they let you finish them or summit them. It's like, or mountains and these long trails, like they are the teacher and they are the course setter, and we are but one soul walking it. And there's such a humility that comes with that, I think, of like they let you finish, or they let you start, and they get to decide whether you are going to finish or not. And it's been a huge thing for us of humility, of like, the PCT let us finish, and the PCT let us continue our footpath, and we didn't have to break it. And, you know, these other trails we've been doing, they have not let us finish, and we've had to recalibrate and reevaluate and go, okay, that's a blow to the ego.
Oh yeah.
Because we're like, what did we do wrong? Like, what's wrong with us that we can't finish? And, you know, and having to go to this new place of, no, maybe it's the trail, actually. Maybe we're supposed to learn a lesson we're not learning. And it's like, you're not done here yet, because you're not learning what I'm trying to teach you. And so you get to come back again for round 2, 3, 4, whatever, until you figure out what this lesson is that I'm trying to teach you. You know, I feel like you learned minimalism and this humility of the ego and these very specific lessons that the grid taught you, that you're now taking with you and applying, and you're taking into every part of your life. And that's what I love about nature. It's like, when we go out and do these things, whether it's a hike for a day, or it's a hike for 2 days, or a hike for a week or 2 weeks, you know, we come back into these other places of our life where you're an ecologist biologist, I am a film producer, and I'm able to then reapply these places that I learned and realize that's not as big of a deal as it is becoming. Or how do we problem solve this moment in a safe and efficient way that helps everyone, because we're all human here in this moment? Or if the trail was trying to teach me something very specific, well, how do I then apply that into my life in every place, whether it's with my husband or whether it's with my mother? Or, yeah, I love that you took it versus like I got to conquer this, which I'm sure there's a piece of that. We all do that when we go into spaces of like, I want to conquer a 14er. I want to get up that mountain and summit. But I just think that you let it become like a very great, what's the word I'm trying to think, a shaman or like something that guided you, you know?
Well, and there's the other part too. Some might say, I just want to go outside and commune with nature. But there's this part of you that wants to do these badass things and climb to the tops of the peaks. So I think having an approach that utilizes both of those mindsets is like a really good way to go about it. You know, you're communing, but you're also out there seeing what you're capable of and, you know, what nature has to offer at the same time.
I think that's very well said. And what I think about a lot, because, you know, people talk about runner's high.
Oh, yeah.
Or it could be peakbackers high or through hikers high or whatever. I think a lot of it, though, it's like you're saying, Marie, the mountains will teach you if you let them. To me, a lot of it is self-empowerment. And it doesn't have to be a through hike or an ultra marathon. It's whatever you or I or somebody else needs to do. And it could be the 5K, or it could be whatever. Now, it can't be the 5K if you need to do more.
Mm-hmm.
But only you know what you need to do. But when you get out there and you do that, then you're like, hey, I did that. And if I did that, I can maybe do some other things. And it just causes your confidence level to go up for everything. And I think nature provides so much. I could think of it as providing energy. And I think Mother Nature, when she was evolving us or doing whatever, she was like, these hairless monkeys with the big brains, they need something extra because they're just like hiding in their cave. So she gave us energy packaged as joy. So I think, like a lot of animals, we have joy to get out there and explore our world. That's a form of energy because you can't stay hiding in the cave. You have to understand your world. And so she made it fun. Mostly.
Mostly.
Do you think there's also something primal in us that longs for? I always feel pulled to nature, and I don't know if that's just something we all feel, or I don't know. It just feels like a longing, like it's calling to me, like a voice, out in the wind, and I like need to go and find it.
It's interesting. And of course, that's John Muir, right? We all love John Muir. The mountains are calling, and I must go and study them incessantly while I can. And it's funny because, I was never even conscious of the mountains calling until I was 50 years old. And this scene is in the book. It's actually in the first chapter of the Chasing the Grid book. Here I am, 50 years old, having done lots of stuff, outward bound and running and hiking, etc. And I'm standing in the Schwangunks and I look out at the Catskills and they literally called to me. And I perceived it as like there was a radio signal that was reaching across and with some code that unlocked something inside me. And they were sort of, it was reverse psychology too. They're like, dude, stay away. It's winter. It's cold. I was like, hey. But the other way to, I like that. The other way to think about it, I know you guys know Edward Abbey, and he said we need the wilderness as a refuge. Otherwise, life in the city will drive everybody to drugs, crime, and psychoanalysis. And I hate for it to become that refuge. I think if we get out there, we get the energy, we learn, we develop, and then we can go back into the rest of the world and hopefully, get the mission done. I guess not everybody does. And that's the question. So I love any organization that gets kids out there. Maybe that's a formative experience that will, pay dividends throughout their life. Or maybe they're like, no, I'm ready to go on a rocket ship with Elon Musk to Mars. I don't care about this stuff. And if so, that's fine. That's maybe where we're all headed.
Yeah, I mean,
poor planet.
what I've been seeing is political allegiances aside, even hunters, not saying that all hunters, because that's a sweeping generalization,
but a lot of hunters
tend to be political right. But even the hunters
are
really upset with, revocation of the roadless rule, increased deforestation for timber harvest, because I think nature is something, it's common ground for everyone, regardless of your political allegiances. And we all, whether you want to get on SpaceX and leave or not, we all, at least at some point in our lives, have appreciated nature and thought it beautiful, or we've loved something outside.
Yeah. I mean,
and we
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say we have some great success stories. I mean, we have, people coming in with bulldozers and tearing down the forest. But, agriculture destroys a lot of natural environments, but we need food.
We do.
So there's a trade-off. But like in New York, conservation has been a big success story.
Yeah.
And somebody quoted me some numbers. I think these are probably not quite right. But Ulster County, where I live, it used to be, 2% forested because everything else was farmland and timbered, and 98%, open. And now it's the reverse. Now it's 98% forested and 2%. Whether those numbers are, you can see pictures. The Catskills from like even, the 1920s, they're denuded. Everything would have been chopped down. And that's all, the boreal forest has all come back. So we don't have to figure out all of these things, but
it's true.
I love it, if we can preserve an extra few acres. And they're not-for-profit organizations that are focused on this stuff. And so for us and your listeners, if you can help a little bit, one of these organizations, whether it's getting kids out there or they're trying to preserve a few acres, that is just incrementally saving the resources. I think that's good work, even if it's small, right? I mean, John Muir was, instrumental, because of who he was in helping get most of the Sierra preserved. And most of us are not going to have quite that impact. But like we can get 5 acres preserved. 5 acres can have a lot of beauty.
Sure can.
And a lot of animals. And, a kid could wander in there and play and have a good time. So I think it's all good.
It's cold outside. And you know what I love?
Being warm?
I love being warm.
Yes, you do. You know what else I love, and I know you love too? Not having a back-breaking load of weight on your back. And you know how you get that?
You know what helps that?
Leve Outdoors.
Because they have a very lightweight, I call them mid-layers, that if it's super cold outside, I will mid-layer it with my puffy. And Cameron, who actually runs the company, and his family, does these epic alpha hoodies. He has a 60, a 90, and a 120. And so all of them are for different types of terrain, weather, and temperatures.
And he also does beanies. He does a hiking sun shirt now. And he's got a super ultra hyper lightweight jacket, which you should go and check out.
Amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
And we have a discount code for them. And so if you go to Leve Outdoors website, you get a discount code of
10% if you plug in Yeti Walks into Basecamp, all one word, at checkout. Cameron does have a lot of promotions internally as well. So the promos don't stack. So definitely use the one that's going to get you the most discount, but you always have this one to fall back on.
And if you are able to, if there's any comment section or anywhere inside of your shipping order, if you can just let him know that Yeti Legs and Basecamp sent you, we would be greatly appreciative.
To that, we are giving away a little care package from Cameron. Thank you, Cameron, for sponsoring this podcast and our episode. We want to hear what your most interesting animal or wildlife encounter is when on a trail. So shoot us an email with that. If you're the first person to email us that story, you'll be a care package winner, and we will coordinate with you via email, get you the right sizes and everything for that care package.
I've been dreaming into selling little wooden coasters made out of beetle-killed trees, and like some of the proceeds going towards like the Colorado State Forest Service, these other conservation organizations trying to save our forests. And yeah, it's little stuff, right? Or go and pick up some trash. You know, you don't have to be donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to organizations.
It's the little things.
It is the little things.
I was on a trail, I forget where this was, and there was a family with a dog, and somebody was like, "Oh, the dog had to go," and then they're like, "Oh, well, now we have to carry this all the way to the top and back," and they're like, "Well, maybe if we just leave it here." And I was like, "Oh,
Come on. Yeah.
you're going to forget on the way back." And I didn't say anything. Maybe I should have, but we are a highly imperfect species. But I think in New York, we've had problems because people come up from the city, and you know what? New York City is trash.
Yeah.
It's filled with trash, and the people have never seen anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So they come up to the Catskills, and they're like, "Well, I'll just toss it like I do in the city, and somebody else will take care of it." And they're not bad people. They just
don't know,
haven't been exposed to the leave no trace values.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ability it's hard to educate people and without, making them feel bad.
Right.
That's a real art.
Right. It's the goal of just wanting to get people outside so that they fall in love with it.
Yeah.
And if you fall in love with something, you're going to protect it. We are ingrained to protect and preserve when we fall in love with something. And so that is, I think, just such a big piece is teaching people then that, like, hey, by throwing an empty water bottle down this ravine, you're creating microplastics, and it's creating a system that is hurting us too. And it's and you're right, it's education. And that's a big piece we're trying to now figure out for our podcast is how do we give education to people or just tell people like, hey, just a heads up, like, this is what is happening when we litter or when we, when a dog's feces doesn't get picked up or when you leave the poop bag there, like this is what's happening in the environment to that specific thing. And if you love this environment, you probably think next time like, oh, I probably shouldn't do that. Like, I know that I get tugged every time there's a piece where it's like, oh, low bar dog might go poop really far away in a specific place where we have to then hike 3 feet of snow into it to try to get to it to clean up her poop. And, in those moments, we could easily be like, it's too far away and it's snow. It'll be fine. But then it's the pull. It's the tug of like, but this is a beautiful, sacred place that we get to enjoy. And I am walking into the home of it. And so how do I treat my home? I'm not going to just poop in the middle of my living room. And so how do I want to respect my home? Well, then how am I going to respect its home? And so that's just become such a big piece of our evolving towards outdoor lifestyle is that mine, especially I feel like it's always been this way. I just have become more and more aware of it because I didn't know, like I would ultra run and I would just shit and sometimes you just gotta go out there, like you gotta go because you're running for a long period of time.
I'm glad you're not asking about nutritional strategies because the wrong nutritional strategy can result in a lot of visits to bushes.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know anything about leave no trace at the time. I didn't know about not pooping by water. I didn't know because I was ultra running. I wasn't living outside or camping outside. I wasn't feeling the process. I wasn't pulling water sources all the time. I mean, it's just such a different world when you all of a sudden start to be inside of nature and feel it. And I'm like, oh man, I need to apologize to nature.
Yeah, these are, in a sense, good problems because if you guys, your podcast, and other people inspire more people to get out there, then we have growth problems, and it's not just garbage, but it's parking and other things. But those are all good problems to have in the sense that if people aren't using nature, they won't possibly care about it at all.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to support, like we have in New York, we have DEC and New York State Parks, but we also have a bunch of not-for-profit organizations. We have the Trail Conference, which has a lot of volunteers. They're out on the trails, and so there's actually a lot of people who are trying to manage this access. By the way, in the Catskills, as I mentioned, a lot of the trails, a lot of the mountains don't have official trails. But as usage has gone up, you're starting to get a network of trails forming, and so the state is trying to figure out what to do, and they may in fact say, "Hey, let's make these official trails so that we don't have people wandering all over the place and trashing, the more delicate boreal." So there's a lot of pragmatic and practical, decisions to be made, but a lot of people involved in actually managing this stuff. I had no idea until I was about 40, and I was on a trail run, and I passed somebody with some clippers, and they were clipping away the blueberry brush, and I was like, huh, I guess the trails don't just come out of thin air and maintain themselves.
Yep.
So I had no idea. That's something we do in New York. Some friends and I have a group called Run Wild, and we put on races. But we try to, we keep the money from the races, and we try to use it for land conservation and stewardship projects. And we've been able to do a little bit of help here and there. But trail maintenance is important. Acquiring those small parcels that somebody knows the seller, and after 20 years, I mean, the Schwangund Mountains, which are about 2 hours north of New York City, there's about 60,000 acres. It's now a whole greenway, and that was done parcel by parcel over like 40 years.
Wow.
Love hearing
And
that.
with not very much state involvement. It was Open Space Institute, it was Trail Conference, it was other organizations. So again, finding ways to either volunteer a little bit of time or give a few dollars to help these organizations. That's something I think about, just like, hey, I've gotten so much value and joy out of the trails and forests. I need to do something to make sure they're around for my grandson
Oh, yeah.
and the next generation. And it's cool. I'm not going to be able to peak bag and run forever based on the rate at which I'm slowing down. And it's just part of life. So if I can contribute to preserving a little bit of land, that's like so cool because I know what it means. I know the value. I really like the idea of just increasing the preserved areas. And the older I get, the more we have a little trail race we sponsor, and it's aimed at kids. And you see the kids out running on the course, and that's fun.
Oh, I love
Oh.
that.
Next generation, that's where it's at.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure is. Where can folks find your book? And do you have a website people can look at?
Yeah. So the book is called Chasing the Grid, and it's on Amazon, or you can go to my website, www.barefootken.com, and you'll find the book right there as well.
Does your website have any pictures of your glutes? Since apparently. Oh, man.
They're all like selfies, so they're the front. I've been thinking about getting a 360 camera.
You should do
that I
that.
could capture
Just so you can show people.
my butt. Thank you, but you've just given me you guys are authorized dispensers of trail names, given that you've done a lot of trails.
Wesley's
Thank you for the
really
new-
good at giving trail names,
I
actually.
wonder how many people we have named.
A lot. We've named a lot of people on through hikes, actually.
We
So
have.
it's but mostly Wesley. He's
Yeah.
the creative name.
It makes me
person.
happy to know that there's a legacy.
I could return the favor, but I like Yeti Legs and Basecamp, so I think I have nothing better to suggest. To wear them with, happiness and pride.
We
Oh.
do. We do. We actually have base camp flags up in our camper van.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're looking for a house now, so we'll have to relocate them to
Yeah.
the home.
Yeah.
Ken, thanks so much for being on the episode. We've really enjoyed this, and it turned into more of like a I don't even know if this is a word. Naturopathic I don't know.
Conservation.
Yeah, not homeopathic. I'm trying to think of like homeopathic, but with nature.
I feel like we were just sitting at a coffee shop drinking coffee, talking about our like things, and people just get to listen in on it.
Are you barefoot right now?
Yeah. Yes.
I love it. I love it.
Nice.
And by the way, I'll mention, let you guys go, but I'll mention I've led a handful of intro barefoot hikes,
Ooh.
and here's what happens: the young people, they just fly down the trail, and I'm like, hey, wait for me.
Yeah.
And then we've had some older folks, and they go very slowly. We had Michael Bonger, who's the president of the Catskill 3500 Club, and he's in his 70s, and he got up to the top of Windham Mountain, 3,500 feet, 3-mile hike with acorns and rocks and really dry, hard-packed ground. And he said that this was, to him, it felt like a supreme accomplishment.
Wow.
And then we're going to do another hike in the spring. So I'll come out to Colorado sometime, and if anybody's interested, we'll pick, a little easy trail somewhere and do an intro barefoot hike. If there's
Sign us up.
and it's about short distances, easy, and then you go back to the ultra running and the through hiking. But thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it, and it's been fun to talk with you guys.
Yeah, I'm actually not going to let you get off of the show yet without answering this question. We love to ask everyone this. What is some advice that you would give to folks listening who just want to get outside? Maybe they're a bit hesitant, or maybe they even want to go and try to do the barefoot thing. What is a little piece of advice you would like to leave them with?
So I hate to say this, but on the internet, there's a lot of information. By the way, I'll give a shout out to Jeff Hester and the Social Hikers, and they have peak bagging challenges all around the country, and they've curated, lists of really popular and accessible mountains so that you're not just scrolling through all trails. But there's a lot of information online, and there are clubs and groups and people who've written blog posts. And so in your area, the best mountains are where you can reach them. So in your area, just go online and see what you can find people talking about, and then just go do it, and if you're unprepared, you'll learn. And, don't climb a mountain in the middle of a snowstorm, but go do something easy and just see what you think.
Explore with discretion. I like that.
Yeah, but you're taking you're going off the highway onto a dirt road.
Yeah.
So, but you're going to operate yourself as we evolved to operate. So, but just do it. Yeah, give it a try. Do something short and easy. And here's what's exciting to me. I mean, for all that the world is becoming super high tech, and we worry about everybody that's just like plugged into the matrix and screaming on social media or whatever, I keep finding lots of people, lots of young people are going out and hiking and discovering it. And that gives me a lot of, confidence. And so if they can do it, so can somebody else. All sizes, all shapes, all abilities.
Exactly.
Just do it. Yeah.
That's what
Go for it.
one of our favorite sayings that we accumulated from one of our dear friends on the PCT is, if you can do some shit, I can do some shit.
Exactly.
There's that egotistical mindset right there. You know what? I think it's a beautiful part of humanity.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you for sharing that, Ken.
Yeah,
really
that was
appreciate
beautiful.
it. And thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. You are just a treat of a human. Like, you have such incredible wealth of experience and just an openness to nature. And so it's been awesome getting to have you. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I'm on my best behavior right now. You have not seen me stepping on a rock. So
does the profanity meter go up a little bit more?
So there's oh, it's so funny. I have a friend, he's like, Ken, I've never heard you grumble or curse or say anything. And that's because you're around. When I'm by myself, it's a different story. But it's been delightful talking with you guys again. So thank you so much. I look forward to connecting in Colorado one of these
I
days.
know. In the real world.
Yes. In the real world. Yeah. Yes, that would be amazing. And everyone, again, go check out his book, Chasing the Grid. I do not think that you will be disappointed. I think it's going to be a fun, exciting. If it gave any precursor to our podcast episode, I think the book will be just as exciting and entertaining. So go check it out either on his website or on Amazon.
Yeah, we have a copy and we've been digging into that one lately. So go and do yourself a favor. Try it out. Well, folks, Tramily, thank you so much for listening to our podcast and to this interview we had with Ken Posner. It was a delight talking to him and hearing about his connectivity with nature and how he is communing with nature via being outside barefoot. What was your big takeaway from that, Marie?
Oh man, I had so many takeaways, but honestly, just the idea of walking barefoot down the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I really want to do this now. Like I want to be connected to nature in a urban jungle. I think that would just be such a fascinating psychology. So
Yeah.
I think that was a big takeaway for me, is just unpacking why I wouldn't want to be barefoot in any place in society. I think it's just very fascinating. So
Maybe I'll go get the mail barefoot or the newspaper or something. Start
Yeah.
there. Start small.
what about you? What was your takeaway?
I think that just trying to commune a little bit more, whether it's physical connectivity or forest bathing type things. You know, just
Forest bathing? Yeah, are you
Heck
going to do
yeah.
it?
No. My forest bathing is just going out to the woods and looking at things to take pictures of. So
Yeah.
we all connect in different ways.
We do.
But
Well, thank you everybody for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, please like and subscribe
and leave a comment.
Leave a comment. We love hearing from each and every one of you.
We wouldn't do this if we didn't enjoy hearing back from y'all.
It's very true. So you can email us at yetiwalksintobasecamp@gmail.com if you have any thoughts, comments, any feedback. We would love to hear from you. Also, we are going to accumulate trail stories. So if you have any trail stories, whether it's a scary haunting, something super near-death experience, or just a really crazy wild moment on trail.
Or if you had a really gnarly toenail come off, tell us about that. Write
Yeah,
us.
we would love to hear from you so we can tell your story. So we want to accumulate, and when we finally have enough stories, then we'll actually do a whole episode on those stories. And stay tuned for that. But also please send them to us. We want to know.
Bingo. To yetiwalksintobasecamp@gmail.com. Lastly, we wanted to give a huge shout out to our editors. Thank you for always being dedicated to the cause and to the podcast and producing the best episodes possible for our listeners. So thank you. And thanks to The Fire Once Lost for our intro and our outro music. We've been using it for over 2 years now. We love the vibe. The track we use is called Appalachian Trail.
Go check him out.
Go check it out. Just remember, it does not matter what trail you're out there hiking, because at the end of the day, we're all just taking a walk. Hey everyone, Yeti Legs here. We just wanted to let you know that here at Yeti Walks into Basecamp, we do not use AI for any of our editing, recording, social media, or image generation. Everything is done by hand by our team, and that's how we want it to stay. The use of AI has detrimental effects on our environment, and we want no part of it. So we hope you enjoyed this episode that was hand edited by our team with talent and integrity.